So let's help our audiences and marketers, founders understand how can they better understand when talking to their pool of clients if they are having traction in an early market and
Yep.
visionaries are knocking the door, or either they are more in a late market or a mainstream market and are rather the pragmatists, the interested about their products. How can I differentiate that?
Yeah. So the signs that I always look for is when you're interacting with a prospective customer, if they tend to be very technology focused
Mm,
and they're asking questions like, how does this work? How is your product designed? What are the technical attributes? Why is your technology more advanced? That's a classic sign of an innovator. And
mhm,
that's somebody who wants to get into things that are really new and be a change maker, right? And they want to basically explore and figure it out. And it's very technically oriented. So that's one thing to look for in innovators. Early adopters tend to talk about making a big difference. They like to find what is often called a transformation. So they tend to have that visionary point of view and they'll ask questions about this could make a really big difference, couldn't it? If we were to apply it in a certain use case or a certain industry, it could really make a huge change. And that kind of interest is really very much a characteristic of an early adopter. They want to see transformational change, big advantage, big leaps forward. So that's early adopters.
mhm.
And they're a lot of fun to work with. And in fact, most technology-based companies love early adopters. There's no question.
Yeah.
All right. But then on the other side of the chasm,
Mhm,
you run into the mainstream and then things really flip. Now you have people who want to go slower, one step at a time, and just make gradual improvements.
mhm.
And they tend to be very vertically oriented. So they're not going to ask about the technology or really the product as much as how does this fit into my industry and how does it solve the problem that I really need to solve? And I only really want it to do one thing. Can it solve my one problem? And that's a clear sign of the early majority is vertical industry focus with a specific problem in mind that they want to solve.
Hmm.
And they
And
want
they
to
start
see,
asking about references, right? That's
and they
another
do.
sign.
And
Risk
yep,
reduction attributes.
absolutely. So they're very much going to say to you, your solution looks good, but let me talk to other people in the industry, in my industry that have already used it. Huh. And if you're just crossing the chasm, you don't necessarily have references yet.
Mhm,
And that's often a challenge.
mhm,
And then continuing through the mainstream, the late majority, they tend to know, they recognize that a lot of their colleagues have already adopted this new solution. They know that it's important that they've got to pay attention to it or they're going to just fall too far behind.
mhm.
And they're very focused on, is it really simple and can I get it at a big discount? So
Yeah.
they want it cheap. They don't they hate complexity. They're actually a giant piece of any given market. You can make a lot of money just providing a simple solution that's not very complex, that's very cost effective,
Mm,
and that will attract literally a third of all of your potential buyers if you do that. Laggards, they're probably not going to engage until they have to. Something
mhm,
happens with their current method breaks and cannot be fixed, so they are forced to engage.
Mm.
and that a lot of times that's a long way off. So laggards are very hard to serve, but it doesn't mean they will never buy. It just means it's slow and hard.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
the chasm is basically this huge difference between the behaviors and motivations to buy between two dramatically different groups of adopters.
Yep.
Visionaries, which compose an early market. So when you are creating a category,
Yep.
we can say that you are in an early market. You're targeting innovators and early adopters, and then mainstream markets. And because they dramatically change the way they buy technologies, innovations, and applications, we have this chasm of adoption.
Yep. Absolutely. Big, enormous difference. I was watching a movie recently where a person said the day if you're married and you have your first child, the day your first child is born, your whole life changes completely. Okay, which makes sense. Same thing with crossing the chasm. If you're serving early adopters, your whole life changes completely in serving the early majority of the mainstream. It is going from people who love and support new things to people who are very cautious and do not want to take risks. They don't like risk. They dislike risk intensely. So you go from a we like risk to a we hate risk environment. And
Mhm.
that's a big change. And your whole company has to adapt.
Yeah.